Again, thank everybody for joining us, and we're going to have just a mixed match of slides and stuff. It's been just crazy schedule-wise, and Carol and I were just talking about how there's so many things to do and never the time to do them, and I've got a couple ideas for talks I need to put together, but it's a matter of finding the research. So I decided I'm going to take it easy. We're going to look at more pictures of the 64 fair, since that's the favorite one for many of us. Eric, I got to say, I love your mask there. You making me want to do a talk on Disney World again all of a sudden. So it's great. Well, let me jump over here to the pictures. 1 second. I will open them up. Okay, and just 1 second while I get here over to share my screen. Share screen. Okay, there we go. So we're going to start going back again. They're kind of all over the place. No particular rhyme or reason to them. Basically, just the name, the way that they were named. But we're up at the top of the Kodak Moon Roof Pavilion, and I particularly enjoyed this one of a twilight time. I like night at the fair, but twilight was really great because you got the advantage of seeing some of the lights on in the pavilions. You could see the luminaries lit up down below, but you also had enough light that you could get some of the other structures lit up pretty well. So Raleigh Crump's famous Tower of the Four Winds, and someday, if I don't know, should I spend the money in a house in Chicago, or should I build a Tower of the Four Winds in my backyard? The way we get winds up here, that would be the Tower of the Gale Winds. So we're up again on a roof. This time it's the Port Authority heliport, and that's the staircase that you would come up from down below. When you down below, you would buy your tickets, go through a briefing of the helicopter, what you're going to see, what to do, how to get on, how to get off in an emergency. But then you would come out of that door, walk up this flight of steps, follow the stanchions with the red poles there, and go off for the helicopter ride. So nice day in New York, not as smoggy as everything, but you can see they had a little weather station. You got the 2 red lights up there, for safety, but just to the left of it is the wind speed indicator for the air traffic control guy in the little tower we saw last week to give people directions. One of a series of photos taken for General Motors in black and white for use in newspapers. Their product salon down below, and you can see, Frigidaire, well-known name, but Allison, the name not as well-known in the family, but they were a big maker of engines and other geared products that was under the GM banner. Euclid in the background, I believe, is tractors and farm equipment. And here's a real sad one, but it's kind of interesting one. You have the bell system being torn apart in the background, and you have Rheingold over here in the front. And what's interesting about Rheingold, you say, hey, it's a brick wall. How do they rip out the ground floor and not have all the bricks fall down? Well, that's because the bricks were actually sheets of plastic that looked like bricks that were just, attached up there and keep the thing going. So it was funny, back in the lot when Carol and I worked at Disney, we had a small town, and they had a brick building with one section of the bricks that were actually done in foam rubber. And that was so, it's a scene in a movie where the character goes and punches somebody and the guy ducks out of the way and his fist goes into the wall. Well, rather than have a brick wall for the guy to punch into, they made a section of the wall with foam rubber. And it was fun because you'd go by and people wouldn't know it, and you'd say something like, hey, you want to see this, and you pound it. Well, one day I was out there with a guy who pounded it and missed it and hit the real brick wall. So I don't think he made that mistake twice. But we enjoyed our rubber brick wall. And everybody, of course, will be able to name this one. That song is now stuck in your head. It will leave there in approximately 2.5 weeks. Outside the Swiss Watch Pavilion, you had the mural up here of kids all enjoying themselves, but inside this, I got a kick out of this one in a way, because here's people lined up to go inside for displays of watches. Nothing exciting. There was no display. Switzerland took you for IMAX tour of the Swiss Alps or anything. You could go and see how watches were made and everything. But this was the pavilion where they had the master time clock that drove all the other clocks around the fairground. And that was one of the things my Uncle Bill worked on, was connecting this all over the place. So when we went to the fair, we had to go by and get a tour and a lecture on how all the interlocked clocks worked. Off to the transportation area, the SKF pavilion, the one with this big tower there, is where they gave out for a while free samples of ball bearings, and talked in the past about how if you want to create pandemonium in New York, you give out free ball bearings, and then at the snack bars, you give out free straws, and now you've got thousands of kids wandering around with metallic pea shooters. So they eventually had to be requested to stop doing free ball bearing samples, which on its surface, why would you give out free ball bearing samples? But they did. Up at the top of our beloved New York State Pavilion, so Joey would be able to recognize this view today if he went all the way up to the top, but of course the Belgian Village and the rest of it is all gone. We're off to the Wax Museum, and they have here Ruby shooting Lee Harvey Oswald. So it was, you can imagine this was a very topical thing back in the day of the fair. Kennedy had not been dead long, and either had Oswald. So a number of people wrote complaining that this was too painful, too topical, and they wanted the exhibit removed, and Walters, the Wax Museum people, refused to do it, but it was something that got a lot of controversy at the time. This one I really got a kick out of. This was the West Virginia Pavilion, and they were having a shop of glassware. And this was a professional picture taken for, I think it was Life or Look magazine. Really nice size negative. It's about 6 inches, so it really reproduced well. But my mother collected some glass stuff. Carol has collected a number of glass things over the years. And I just really got a kick out of all the colors and everything in this particular picture. So this was the Pilgrim Glass Shop at West Virginia. And if you went in and bought any of these things, they would be very happy to mail it to your house, so you didn't have to carry it and tote it around for the rest of the fair. I don't know if I've ever seen any of this stuff come up, if it had a sticker on it showing that it was, from the fair or not. But I just really enjoyed the colors. And this was another picture that had faded to a kind of very heavy red look. So I was very pleased how the blues and greens restored on it. And most of us probably have our name there if you went to the fair in the time capsule. This is a replica of the 39 capsule, and you can see up here how much the contents had shifted down over time, compressing. And you start thinking about it, this was only 25 years after the original fair. So if these things are all sitting down for 3,000, 5,000 years, wherever they're putting it, by the time they open it, everything might be down about this level. But it was a, this replica is still around, and it's on a museum in Pennsylvania. You can go see it, and they periodically loan it out to other events. The AMF monorail, somebody was just posting a joke on the Facebook site yesterday about the Simpsons show, where supposedly the monorail was sold to the folks at Springfield. And they had if you've never seen it, it's a great episode of The Simpsons. Probably, I think I've seen maybe 2 episodes of The Simpsons. And this is great, though, because a huckster comes to town. It's just like the Music Man. You need a monorail, folks. That's what you need, and then, of course, they have trouble right there in their version of River City when the monorail goes amok and the decals start falling off about the town monorail, and underneath it says 1964 World's Fair, and it does not fare well. Hopefully, most of you, if you visited the fair, never had to go here. This is the Atometic Hospital. It was a prototype. The idea of this was a modular hospital. Each of these pie slices would be put in a shipping container. And if there was a disaster in some place, like a hurricane or a tornado or an earthquake, or in impoverished nations, you could bring those containers in, put the hospital together. And I think there were a total of 3 of these things ever built. The last one, I believe, was torn down just a number of years ago, but it was very high tech for the time. They did a lot of tours of health professionals, but they also, if you got hurt, they had a small scale operating room in there. The idea was that not that they would, do any amputations or anything there, but they would stabilize you, get you in an ambulance, and take you to a real hospital. But it was a real cutting edge design. Oh, cutting edge design. We talked last week about the Chrysler turbine car. Here's the interior of it. All sorts of mysterious switches that we would probably all love to click and push and see what they did. But this was the car. You can see the transmission going through the center of it, the rod going back through it. But there were people that post online what it was like to get one of these on loan for a month and how they were the envy of the town, and then they had to give them back. More of Chrysler, the truck bodies there, the gazebo that they called it was all done with truck bodies, and off to the right, not really visible, is the zoo that they had made of other truck parts and stuff. And I don't recall, I think I may have the name. Let me just go out of full screen mode for a second. Okay, Coca-Cola. That's the Coca-Cola pavilion going up there. This is going up, not coming down. So they are building, oh yeah, I guess right here, it's the Coca-Cola logo if I had zoomed in on it. One of the prototype cars at the GM pavilion. These were not real cars at any stretch of the imagination. They were plastic shells, and they were on a rocking mechanism, so they would tilt back and forth so you could get the views of the car. But up above, you could see how the concept was here that the seats would swivel around. Supposedly, they were talking about self-driving cars coming, but the concept was also that when you stop, you could entertain in the car. So I don't know about you, but when I stop, I tend to get out of the car. GM brought in a locomotive. They had to bring in a giant flatbed truck and lift it up with a crane. You can see it says 1964 above it. There's a big sign here, do not climb on the locomotive. Well, this was actually a GM employee washing and keeping it clean. In 1965, excuse me, they changed the nameplate of it to say 1965. And the last I knew, this train survived after the World's Fair, was sold as a surplus item. And I hadn't checked for about 3-4 years, but was still owned by a railroad and being used to move freight cars around in a freight yard. So quite kind of an expensive piece of World's Fair souvenir. More building the fair, digging the basement for the General Motors Pavilion. It went way, way down. It was a very sizable structure indeed. Excuse me. Futurama, this house was out in the desert and the car was down here. The idea was you would drive in and then the car, you could go upstairs and rotate the car, drive it back out to the driveway. So you didn't need a big driveway, but the car looked like the Batmobile, kind of neat. It was, you drive it in and then would turn around, so you didn't have to back your car in and out of the driveway. You were always driving forward. And a nice view of the glider rides going past the United States Pavilion. You can see the sky in New York was just like here in LA today, gray and gloomy. Real neat view of the Gotham Plaza area. There's one of the Swiss clocks I mentioned that my uncle worked on that they tied all into the Swiss watch pavilion we saw earlier. But this was I look at these views and just trying to remember my excitement as my first day as a 12-year-old kid coming down the ramp, and there was the fair and everything waiting for me. So just so many memories when you see one of these pictures, at least for me. The people wall, we talked about this last week. People were crammed in there really, really tightly. Again, they had to make a way for people to get out if they really needed to. I mean, it's mostly in case the ride ever jammed up top, and I don't believe it ever did, but they had staircases, you can see up here, coming back down if needed. After the fair ended, IBM was put this up for sale. I don't know who else would ever have a need to take a wall full of people and lift them up at an angle. So they were selling the giant pistons that were driving this. And I don't know if they ever had much luck in actually selling those, because again, pretty giant custom-made pistons would find a small home indeed. A log flume, big innovation for 1964. The Oregon Timber Carnival. It's kind of sparsely attended today and most days. Every now and then I've got some pictures of it well attended. Usually I think, excuse me, usually probably by tour groups that had pre-bought their tickets. The Masonic Center. This archway is now at a Masonic temple. I'm trying to remember where it is. Memory fails me. Somewhere in the Midwest, but it is there. And I'll have to find it. Again, it does show on Google Earth. You can look down and see it sitting in the, it's in the back lot of their properties, but they moved it there after the fair and it's been there ever since. Nice to know that it survived. Off to the United States Space Park. You might get a kick out of this, Kenneth, you know, the fact that you could actually walk up, put your hand right on it, pound it, nail, you know, tap it, hit it, listen to it echo. Today, the thought of taking a priceless artifact like this and putting it out there and encouraging people to come up and lay their hands on it is just kind of terrifying, isn't it? So, but back then, that was the way it was. It was actually also on a wheeled base. And we've tried to ask, you know, where do they put it at night? You know, they just leave it out, or because the U.S. Space Pavilion didn't really have any buildings. So we've never been able to find out where they wheeled it to at night, but hopefully they wheeled it someplace and chained it down, because again, it's just sat there in a wheeled cart, kind of crazy. And this is a kind of neat one. They've got their plastic leis from the Hawaii Pavilion, and they're getting ready to go off for another tour of the fair. This is over by the Hawaii Pavilion, a little area here that kept you from getting into the fair for free unless you decided you were going to swim through it. Another view from the Kodak moonroof, a little later than the one that we saw before. And it's actually not just a couple hours later, it's a couple months later, because the Tower of the Four Winds has been repainted. Looking across the fountain area, the early morning, this was the time they would drain down the lake, and mentioned before it was done through tidal action. There were gates over in this area here that they could close off, and the water would flow out over here, so that as the tide went out into Flushing Bay, the level of the lake would come down. There's a walkway that would appear as if magic out of the water. They would come out, restock all the fireworks for the night show, open up the gates, the water level would come back up, the walkway would disappear, and then they would turn on all the fountains, run the fountains throughout the day, and then at night the fireworks show would go. So very clever, low-tech way of just letting gravity do its job. And we're inside the RCA Pavilion. So they did a number of shows there, mostly for the PBS station for New York City at the time. But you can see here he's playing, he's got a monitor, and it's just a few minutes before 3 o'clock. So he's probably finishing up his show and getting ready to go. So Wayne, I don't know if you recognize, there's not much equipment to recognize in this particular shot, but I thought it was a nicely done thing from a visitor's gallery that ringed the studio. If anybody recognizes the performer, please let me know. Early. This is, I like to tell people, this is not Joey Vento's backyard, and that he's not getting today's delivery. This is digging up everything that was in the ground from the 1939 World's Fair and redoing the ground for the 64 World's Fair. So this was from the Fair Corporation archives. They had dumped, no pun intended, the negative. A woman who worked at the fair took it home and then later resold it to me. But this was called sanitary fill operations. So they were bringing in stuff to fill up the ground and do more compacting. And we're off to Sinclair, some of our famous dinosaurs there, done by the Jonas Studios in upstate New York. Back over for Small World. Come on, mouse. There we go. Yeah, I think we can figure out where this one is. If anybody doesn't figure it out, you get an F. And we're over at China, looking out at night from their VIP level out. People bringing the Unisphere, and again, pretty crowded, still that time of night. Our poor United States Pavilion. You can see up in the back the exhibit hall of the Great Society, the cascading fountains that came down. They even had a water fountain down below for people that needed a drink. But again, this massive pavilion, and you know, it's just a shame that they never found another home for it. But again, that's one of the things, collecting random numbers, thousands of pictures. I'm just pleased to get, you know, things other than just the front building, view of the building. Occasionally get, you know, other odds and ends that go in here. And here we have an escalator going up. Tearing the fair down, the remnants of West Virginia. They left as much signage as they could on these things so that the demolition crews knew which buildings they were to go to and tear it all down. So sad to see it going. More of the monorail. Again, you can kind of date pictures by little odds and ends. You know, is this a 65 view or 64 view? Well, there's the Continental Circus tent down below, and since they weren't there in 65, that would kind of tell us. Just like this tells us it's 64 because it's got the Texas sign in the back it was repurposed in 65 as a different name. Belgian Village. Only went there a couple times because it was expensive to go in, and you know, as a kid, there wasn't anything in there more than shops or that sort of thing. But it was still kind of fun to walk around and trip on the cobblestones. This is the bell system going up. You can see there's a scaffold here. They're doing some work, but in the background here, this metal tower. This is built by American Bridge Company, and you can see has you know, the name Bethlehem Steel in that. But these towers were put up here temporarily so they could build out the cantilevered structure. And then once it was all connected into the center supporting area, they could drop out the other support structures. And another one of the tilting car. Everybody lined up for Ford. Somebody just posted online that they think they found this red Mustang in a collection, and they're trying to verify the serial numbers to make sure it's the same one that was on display at the fair. So if so, you can imagine what a find that would be. And unlike the ones that were up here on the Magic Skyway, this wouldn't have been sat in by 3 million people, so the interior would probably be in even better shape. But now the Mustang enthusiasts are all frantically trying to find out if that's the one that's been discovered, if it's really a one from the fair or not. The ones up here, of course, had the tape decks and everything in it, so you can start verifying a car by the metal platen that pulled it through the ride, the mounts for the 8-track player in the trunk, that sort of thing. But the car out here would not have had any of that, so it's basically a giant serial number search. More plastic tilting cars. And we're up on the Skyway, taking a ride down. We've got Indonesia just down below us, Spain off in the center, and looking all the way across to the Bell system, GE swirling around there on the right. Mentioned in the past how IBM had to add these little lights up here that said IBM because after the fair opened, they realized nobody at night was getting the IBM sales show. So I have pictures of them about 6 or 8 weeks into the fair, putting scaffolds up, guys with hammers chiseling out the words IBM and putting new light up ones in there. More fun on the log flume. They don't look so happy, do they? They must be getting wet on a cold day. I know on a hot day, this was a great ride to ride on a hot day. And kind of self-explanatory. And we're inside. Let me just make sure I get this entirely right. Yes, okay, this is the Masonic Center, and it's the seals of lodges around the world. So you have the national flags, and then down below the Masonic seal for that particular group of them. This was kind of neat. They did a dinner show, and at times they brought out cobras and entertained you with those. But in this particular case, he's bringing out your drinks and he's balancing them all on his head. This was not a show that I got to see in person. It was well over the Cotter family budget. So I have to live vicariously, wondering if he's going to drop those or not. Everybody must be going in one direction and not coming back from the other one. So again, we're over at the in this particular area, the lake amusement area, looking across over towards the what you call it? I'm sorry, we're over in the transportation area, looking over here. We've got the slide at Wisconsin. This was the air conditioning system to keep the giant block of cheese from going and becoming a grilled cheese sandwich. The VIP level up at the New York State Pavilion, and lots of people all going someplace, including you can see people actually walking down the highway. On days when the fair, particularly near the end of it, people just gave up trying to get into the fair, and they would just park their car right on the side of the road and go walking in. And they made the assumption they're not going to be able to tow away hundreds of us. And they were pretty much for the most part right. The city realized that if they came and just towed away a car, somebody else who could drive up, hey, there's an empty spot, they'd parallel park and they'd have another car. So once the road was totally filled up, there was no place to park, there was no harm, no foul, they just left everybody there. So the last 3-4 days of the fair, the roads were just astonished. It was amazing to see how many cars were illegally parked. More sanitary landfill. Building Shea Stadium. People said they looked at this and realized why the upper deck shook so much. And if you had never been there in a day when the Mets were winning and the home team was really, the home team crowd was really in a roar, people stomping their feet in unison, that building would shake real good up top. It was designed to do exactly that. It's a world of laughter. It's no, gotta get that song. Must stop. Tearing down the fair, the space park was left there, and unfortunately, it was left is the right word. It wasn't done with anything for the years after the fair closed. These rockets were just left there to rot. They were finally reconditioned. Over here is the Saturn V boat tail, the bottom section of it. And just down here, you can see one of the mock-ups of the engines. It was just put, after the fair, as I mentioned, the rockets rotted. They were restored, but the boat tail was not. The engines were taken out and they were given out to the Museum of Flight out on Long Island, which has just put one of the rocket engines up for auction. And I think they're estimating that right now the bid is $20,000 to $30,000. So if you want a full-size Saturn V rocket engine, you don't hesitate because they don't come up for bid very often. There's one actually that was a flight-ready one out here built by Rockwell that is on display. They've moved it from one facility to another, and we can drive down the road and see it. So since I don't need to buy one for my yard, I can go see one anytime I want. I'm going to leave this available, but I think it's got about 10 days left to go on the auction. And again, 20,000, 30,000, you could have that in your backyard, or you could put it in your front yard. You could put it on your roof. You could do whatever you want. Have fun with it. Over to the space park again, mock-up here of the lunar lander. Also the whole Apollo command module, and all over here, the instrumentation module. So coming from Long Island, this was a very, very big draw for us because the lunar lander was built by Grumman out on Long Island. And my Boy Scout leader was one of the engineers working on it. So when we went there with the Boy Scouts, we of course made a beeline to go over there. And Dick was, it's funny again, the different things that make your life go in the different directions. I couldn't decide where to go to college. Dick had gone to a school called Clarkson University, and well, Clarkson College at the time. Decided that it was good enough for Dick, and he was building spacecrafts that took men to the moon. It might be good enough for Cotter, and I ended up going there. So if I hadn't been in Boy Scouts, I wouldn't have gone to Clarkson. So up above the sky, riding high in the AMF monorail, the hostess here gave guided tours. She had a little flip-up seat here, which always reminded me of some of the ones that you used to see in the checker cabs. But she could ride around and give you this spiel. It was all computerized and dispatched out of the central station, so she did not have to drive it or do anything. But they would go and describe what you saw down below. Down here, you can see somebody has a Unisphere punch ball. You guys remember those? You'd have sand in them, and you could punch them back and forth in a rubber band and make all sorts of noise. Not the sort of things a lot of them have survived, because 60-year-old rubber tends to have a habit of drying out and going away. Building the fair, this was a big day out here where they were burying the Flushing River. So basically, before the 39 World's Fair, this was all a giant swamp and an ash heap and everything. They recontoured it for the 39 World's Fair, and the river had run through a good section of the property. But they decided for the 64 World's Fair that they would bury more of the river, give it more ground area that they could build pavilions on and stuff. So this was a big day out here. You can see the flag had the early logo for the fair on it. I've got pictures of the ceremony with Moses turning a shovel of dirt in one of my books. But 992 days left. This was the big kickoff for New York City press to see construction actually beginning of the fair. And this sort of vegetation just shows you what the place had been like this entire period of time. Not a real hospitable, usable park. IBM, very early picture. I think this was actually about a month before the fair opened, and they had not yet chiseled out any of the IBM letters with the light up versions. And again, this is Masonic Pavilion. Sorry, my hay fever is kicking in. I'm trying desperately not to sneeze. This is kind of interesting. You can see it's the model diagram of the Midwestern States exhibit. And they went through several different plans. In this particular one, each of the states would have a equal-sized circular disc with exhibits under it, and then a major pavilion here that they would have theaters and stuff in. So they had put together a whole proposal, and I ended up with about a half a dozen slides of where this thing would be. Their concept here was that it would be right off. This is here the USA display. It's a circular plot. At one time, it was supposed to be a circular pavilion, and they would be slotted in here just across the street from it. Of course, it never came to be. And we know what this is, of course. It's a shot of the famous Missouri Snack Bar with that other building behind it. So again, more traffic, more people getting out of their cars and just getting ready to walk in. This was kind of interesting. Wayne will enjoy this one for the technology. Back then, one of the big things you had at the RCA Pavilion was you could see yourself on color TV. Well, the concept of just standing in front of a camera and seeing yourself wave was interesting, but what they had was, as you came out, they had a display where you saw yourself from a few minutes ago or a few seconds ago. And people were just astonished because this was an idea of, oh my God, that's videotape. I mean, videotape was really, really new at this point in time. Things were still being done on film. The whole idea of color videotape was really new. So what they had here was, if you look at this machine, the supply reel here, normally there would be a take-up reel here, and the thing would just record onto itself. Well, this machine was placed in the record mode. The tape would come out, go through this little box here, and go into this machine, which was in playback mode. So from the time that it took here to go over here through the box, get over here, as you were walking along, now you saw yourself 10 seconds later or so on this machine, you know, on the monitors being done there. So then people would say, okay, what happens when you get to the end of the tape? Well, then, okay, for a few seconds, we stop the tape, rewind it all the way over, and then do the same thing back again. You can actually go online when the fair closed. For some reason, an engineer took home the reel of tape, and they've got just a few moments footage from the last day of the pavilion. You can see people seeing themselves on color TV on the last day of the fair. So just kind of an interesting, neat little setup there. And of course, monitors, and again, there was a rotating stage that you got on that moved you around there. So, but today, of course, everything is digital, and you know, you just put it on there, do it in slow-mo and all the rest of it. But that was how you did a tape delay back then. The tilting car has tilted again. More of Shea Stadium. I hope they got a lot of money for all that scrap metal. Just a general view looking down towards Johnson. I don't recall offhand if this was early or later in the year. It's probably early in the year. The trees aren't budding too much. For the most part, there were still leaves on the trees when the fair closed at the end of the year. And someday, maybe they'll light up the view at the World Capitals again. Now this one, if anybody knows what these things are, boy, please do let me know. This is taking the fair down. There's GE in the background. They've taken out the whole show element, the rotating theater and everything has been taken out and sent off to Disneyland at this point in time. But we do not know what these things are. Whatever this one is here, it looks like it's been hacked off a bit. You know, we thought that might have been the Tower of Light fixtures, but they don't match up where the giant bulbs were for that. We do not know what these things are. So again, something near GE, you would think, you know, but maybe somebody just plopped them down there. But if anybody can figure out what these are, I will give an award to the amateur detectives that can figure these things out. If anybody needs a better picture of it, just let me know and I'll send it off to you. Whatever they are, very nicely machined something or others, you know, but there's something. And again, getting near the end of the fair. This was interesting. Again, came out of the Fair Corporation maps of, they had chart after chart after chart of what was being sold or done. And I get a kick out of this because if I zoom in on it, which I'll just do here, you can start making out where, you know, certain pavilions, we know where they were, AT&T, Rheingold, some of the others. And every now and then you come across one that was, you know, on the map, but did not come to be. So I like to just go through them and see where the things were. Here's where we're going to see the Midwestern states over here, and that did not come to be. Others you'll look through, like here was a pavilion from Monaco that did not have a pavilion at the fair. So it's some of these are just interesting snapshots in history of what their planning was at that point in time. Helicopter view, early 1964, and you can tell because the Hall of Science is under construction. None of the tower work has gone up yet. This is kind of neat. Back then, you can see some ghost shots, the tripod shot, time exposure to get it in. This lady here very patiently sat nice and still. Don't know if the photographer asked her to do that, but because of the time exposure, all the other people are just ghosts. And I just got a kick out of it thinking about all the ghostly memories of the fair. Kind of neat one here. Here's the walkway that I mentioned. It's early in the morning. The tide is out. And here's the walkway that they would take a hand cart full of fireworks, come out and load it into each of the launchers out here. Little side one going off to this one here. Down below, Continental Insurance, they had their display inside here. And over here, you could go and rent your strollers and hats and things along that line. chunky square. Last week mentioned the animals that you had to line up and then see the pieces of them through holes and other things. Here was a giraffe and his head, and if you were down below, you could line up his body in that. So just kind of a nice, pretty day out at the fair. The serpentine phone booths, they came in groups of 3 or 4. This has everything for a fair collector. We got phone booths, we got luminaries, we got the trash cans. You know, we're all set. More car, more burying the ramp. You can see all the people came out. I imagine all the women in their high heels must have had just fun walking through the boggy dirt of Flushing Meadows Park. Moses is over here doing the big ceremony, but this was all invited press and dignitaries to come out. Inside the Masonic Center again. Caught the mezzanine level here of the fair, of the New York State Pavilion. People were just asking online yesterday if the Brontosaurus was up on the roof or not at Sinclair, and yes, he was. So the building was built up so you felt like you were walking on a walkway on a hill. Well, the hill was over the building, and down here is where they had the VIP lounge and that for Sinclair. And then down below you had the parkway. It doesn't show up here because of the compression of the lens. Over in the back, one of the brass rail snack bars, brand new, clean balloons, and a bunch of Boy Scouts. I keep looking for myself in these pictures, but not yet. But he was mechanized. His head would go back and forth, and he was definitely up there on the roof. This is one for our urban explorers. This is the Underground World Home, and this is the air shaft that provided ventilation for it, and all the stuff just dumped there. 2 women wrote to me last week that they have the door from the Underground World's Fair home. I wrote back to them, both of them, and said, yes, if you are getting rid of it, I know people that would probably be interested. They have not written back to me, but I will try them again. So just going across the bridge. Here again is the big slide coming down from Wisconsin. Underneath here is the giant block of cheese. Back then, you can see the planes, how much air pollution they threw out. The new jet engines, the 707s and that, were very, very eco-unfriendly. You don't see just contrails of jet exhaust like this on planes today. And here's a real nice view from the helicopter. Again, early '64, told by the construction work going on at the Hall of Science. But this was, again, I could not afford the helicopter ride when I was at the fair, so we did not get to do that. But for the folks that did, I'm really glad they got some nice shots for us. This is where movies are nice, because you could see if this was a movie, the air filter spins around, says Chrysler, the giant fan is going. It was just, stuff to draw you in here and see the world's largest engine. We know what this is by now. Again, they left the name, as I mentioned, wherever possible. Here, I think the palm trees might have been a giveaway that this was the Florida Pavilion. I've always wondered what happened with those trees. When they tore everything else out, it didn't look like they were in a hurry to get rid of the trees or sell them to anybody. But what's kind of interesting is Meadow Lake is totally frozen over. There's snow over here, and the trees look in pretty good shape, don't they? So I like to think that maybe somehow they got back to Florida, or they ended up going to somebody's property. The boathouses in the background is still there, surviving structure from the '39 fair, still there today. GE near completion. All the cars and everything is the workers getting it all done. You could go for a outrigger canoe ride at the Hawaii Pavilion. This was one of the 2 entrances over into the lake amusement area. And inside the Masonic Pavilion, they had a visitor center. More up on the roof here. And this is so sad, isn't it? The thought that nobody cared for the giant 7-Up clock. Let's just blowtorch it off, let it come crashing down to the ground and break into pieces, and we'll haul it away. This was left here again so people knew what it was, what pavilion they're working on. And if you had gone to the 7-Up pavilion, you might see cutouts here. Well, this is where you would pick up one of those plastic trays that have survived of your food to go down and get your sandwiches and all the unlimited 7-Up you could drink. But again, you would think that if you sold this off for somebody for $10, they would have bought it, but nope, crashed down to the ground. That's the end of it. The pavilion, known as the Pavilion in 64, the Winston Churchill Tribute in 65, and today the aviary at the Queen's Museum, the Queen's Zoo. The J-copter, as the sign down here says, was kind of a neat thing where you went up and they simulated you going in a helicopter ride. I mentioned earlier, I could not afford the real helicopter, so it was a real thrill for me to go in the J-copter, thinking I'd never ever get in a real helicopter, and years later, of course, have. But this was so cool to go back to school and tell your friends that you were in a helicopter over the weekend, because there was nobody else in 5th or 6th grade that could make that claim. Rob Bianco would get a kick out of this. We're inside the American Express Pavilion. Very detailed model of the fair that he recreated in his house. Nice day here because you could actually see Manhattan off in the distance. Many days it was just totally obscured with smog and that. Here before is where we mentioned the little set of stairs and the little building that we came out at the beginning, and you'd walk out and get on your helicopter. Again, Gotham Plaza, if you go there today, these building towers are still there and looks, very different without all the buildings out there in the future. But again, walk down there and to me, the ghosts of Flushing Meadows are still out there. The T-Rex, he and the Brontosaurus are now out in Texas at a park. You can go visit them there. Glen Rose, I think it's called. Africa down below, large crowd of people looking at the show underway. And this is, again, night I mentioned, it's kind of neat. You can start seeing inside the pavilion buildings because the light's not bouncing, the sun's not bouncing off. And in here you had a VIP lounge, and you also had, I don't remember which, this was the offices and this was the VIP lounge or vice versa, but that's where all the GM bigwigs would hobnob. Off to Hawaii, getting ready to go take people for the canoe ride. IBM, the forest of artificial trees. Again, they were all lying there in the field for scrap metal after the fair, coming by artificial metal trees. Don't imagine there were takers for trees. They probably recycled into Toyotas or something. This is a Century Grill Cafe, not one of the more wonderful facilities being torn down. The Frontier Palace Steakhouse at the Texas Pavilions. When the Texas Pavilion failed in 64, the steakhouse remained in 65 because it was actually a fairly well-priced restaurant, and people kept going to it. Nice and night view, 66 degrees, not too bad. Let's go. We'll just keep hopping around here. He was really cool as a kid. His mouth opened, his head turned, and they had roaring sounds. It was cool stuff. Billy Graham, little garden area you could walk through and rest. This is kind of neat one. Again, with a telephoto lens, everything compresses so much into a view. This was taken for the New York Daily News Colorado, I think they called it Colorado section, whatever it was, section of the newspaper on Sundays. It would do color pictures. So you've got all the way down, everybody compressed, but you got the J-copter, the monorail. You can see the J-copter up here on its side. Who could not take pictures of the dinosaurs? Everybody getting ready to watch the acrobats. View from the Swiss Skyway. Back to the song. And you thought you were rid of it, huh? Be interesting to go up there today and see how the views change. I imagine it's probably more than just that one tower up there. Again, classic 4-engine prop plane up overhead. Lots of pictures of airplanes over the fair, being so close to LaGuardia. This tower was one of the last things to come down at the fair. Again, left there as a milestone, a monument to a Wayfarer thing for the construction or demolition workers. It looks weird just to see piles of debris and rubble and ruin everywhere, and then the cross standing up there like a sign of hope. Rainy day, but I'd go back. And again, more planes. Looking down from our favorite pavilion. And more Swiss Skyway views. We've seen this guy before. This little brontosaurus was at the entrance of Sinclair. Most of the other dinosaurs have ended up in museums. No one quite knows where this one went. So maybe it's in some Sinclair facility or some Sinclair executive's backyard. Indonesia. When it's closed, again, not running this year. They didn't put any water in the fountains. It was sad that they weren't back for 65. And again, how life takes you in different roads and everything. When I first saw the Polaris missile in 65, little did I know that 8 years later, I'd be working as a designer on the replacement for it. So I don't know where that particular model went. Maybe the Smithsonian has, but yeah, a very impressionistic kid, and 8 years later, I was designing rockets. So life changes. Fun picture, everybody coming in through the main gate over there. This was a very, very red picture, so I was glad to be able to get it back and bring some of the colors. Whether these ladies' coats were quite so red, I don't know, but you do the best you can do. Again, this is another plan for a pavilion that didn't come to be. This was going to be all the Western states getting together. And the concept of this, they were going to build a giant man-made mountain. It was going to put Disney's Matterhorn to shame. That in the center of it was going to be a giant arena with seating, and then have a stage show. And all the way around it, you would have the different states of the Midwestern or the Western states doing their exhibit out here. So I've got quite a few pictures of the outside of it, and then they decided they couldn't build a mountain. Let's go build something else. And then they finally decided we're not going to build anything. And that's where states like Montana and some of the others decided we better go off and do something on our own. This was one that's interesting because down here you can just see making out it says California. This was a pavilion that came. It was going to be all about entertainment, aerospace, live stage shows. California then said we weren't going to do it, so they took the name California off. I forget what other city or country or whatever they try to fob it off on, but the exact same pavilion with just a totally different name on it. So I've got two different pictures, with a different name. Down below, you can see WF10, the publicity series putting out, and with a 10 number, you can tell it was a very early number, well before the fair was underway, when they were trying to drum up interest in it. So here's again the mountains that they were going to do. You were going to have the stage down below, the interior exhibits, but up on the outside you would have recreations of the physical features of those states. So you'd have fake geysers popping up here. Kind of interesting to me. I would put the Salt Lake down at the bottom. For some reason, I have it 3/4 of the way up the mountain. Hopefully, they weren't intending to recreate the odor of the Great Salt Lake, but it would have been a very spectacular pavilion if they had been able to pull it off. Initial view of what they were contemplating for a Ferris wheel. Actually, in this one, you don't see the Ferris wheel cars, but it was intended to be a Ferris wheel. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey had the rights to the transportation area to control what went over there. It was a very complicated scheme they worked out with the World's Fair Corporation. So this was actually in the archives of the Port Authority, and it's unfortunately lost when the World Trade Center came down. It was in their museum or their storage facility in the basement. But this became the Uniroyal Ferris wheel that we know of. In this particular case, you would have gone up a ramp, walked through, back down the other side, and more exhibits down below. But you can see again, February 1961. More of the planned and never made California exhibit. Another view of the western states, and again, you would have walked your way up all the way up there. This is going to be a massive pavilion. I mean, how on earth they would have built it is kind of speculative, but it would have been probably enough steel to build another World Trade Center. Overhead view showing the map of how you'd get the walkway walking up over it. This is the California Pavilion. Okay, we're up above the deck and getting ready to come down. I always get a kick out of things like this trash can. How hard would it have been for them to like paint it occasionally? But I also try to figure out how the hell did it get so beat up, you know? And mentioned it at one time to somebody, and they said it's probably because they get that way from people picking it up and throwing it over the side, hitting the ground, and then bringing it back up again. I'd like to think that that didn't happen too often, but it certainly got its wear and tear up there. You also try to figure out how much trash could people be generating up there, because there was nothing for sale or giving away. But I guess they needed a trash can up there. This is kind of neat plaque at the base of the money tree. So I had already known, of course, that the bills up there came from around the world, but this is the only sign, picture of the sign that I found with the detail that not only are they from around the world, but all the money in the tree was designed and engraved and printed by American Express. VIP, I'm not quite sure who was getting the tour here. This was one of the fair executives sitting up here in the front, but the Pinkerton guards had special raincoats for these days. And if anybody recognizes it, in the background here, I looked at it. I think it might be the Shah of Iran and his wife. I'm not entirely sure. Again, I can zoom in on it a bit, see if anybody else can quite pick it up. But I'm trying to figure if it's him from this type of sunglasses that he's often seen wearing. So again, if anybody happens to know in particular who they are, I'd love to know. Real nice pavilion of the Republic of China. Going into the Festival of Gas. I enjoyed this because it caught the two hostesses in their outfits. Feel sorry for these gals being there all day long in high heels. I sure hope they gave them foot rest breaks somewhere during the day. They had to be tougher people than I could be. Busy day out at the fair. Hall of Science has been built. There's the boat tail that I mentioned if you want to go pick up your rocket engine. Real rainy day, the sort of day just perfect for the time machine. Go back and enjoy it without a whole bunch of people. Bunch of the little Cushman scooters. The one guy has his restored and happily takes it to World's Fair shows. And the final couple days of the fair, people have just cramming into the place. They're getting tired. You can see somebody over here starting to check, hey, one of these flowers come out of the ground. Later in the day, they were ripping this place to shreds and carrying it all out and taking it home with them. Sort of sad. Gotham Plaza at night. This tower was lit up by these spotlights that were bolted onto the top of the luminaires. I got a kick out of this one. We're up at the top of the Better Living Center, the Hilton Cafe up there, and just think about the fact that this little kid here now is probably on Medicare, so we're getting damn close to it. So amazing how time flies. But I just got a kick. They were having such a good day at the fair. Everybody remember the telescopes? You could drop a coin in and go clunk, look around, enjoy your view. Again, every time I come across one of these Boy Scout pictures, I go looking for myself, and so far I'm not there. But they would have us do honor guard things and march people around. So some VIP is getting the tour back here in this little bus, and then the Boy Scouts are giving him an honor guard. So whoever he was, he didn't need the protection of the Pinkertons, but the Scouts would clear the way, and so they would bring in different people from senators and things like that, different states, and they of course had to go see their pavilion so we could look at the flag, figure out where they're going. Did not spend any time here other than try to come and see the sports celebrities. It was really great that they had, oh my God, I can meet Rocky Graziano and some of these other guys, the famous names of the time. The adults were very happy to go and let us stand on line and go meet the sports guys, and they would go off and come back smiling later as they went to the bar. Belgian Village, so sad to think it was so late in opening, but happily they did get it built. Japanese ceremony going on here. Minor operation with the fire department. They had a very few number of fires. Maryland's kitchen caught on fire, a couple others, but they were out here in this particular day. You can see they've got their hose run out, and they weren't as busy as they could have been, which is a very good thing. When you think about the massive fires that some other World's Fairs had, thank God we didn't have one for 64. And she's reading a book. It's not the guidebook. She looks like she's brought a paperback and is just chilling out at the fair. And let's see, I think I labeled this one. Let's see. Nope, just image 18. Oh, Austria. Okay, yeah, thank God sometimes there's signs that tell me where they are. So having a meal inside the Austria Pavilion. And we go from Austria right over to Hawaii again. More of Shea. Helicopter view, early 64. The Hall of Science basement has been built and some of the exhibits are down there, but the construction is overhead. This one is before the fair is actually opened, so you can notice down below all the construction vehicles, and not all the displays are in place yet in the rocket park. This is a tiny little engine. You got to go get the real big one, get it at auction. Nuclear engine for rocket vehicle applications. So this was a whole concept that we're going to launch these and use miniature nuclear reactors to do deep space probes. When you see what happened with the space shuttle exploding, the thought of putting a nuclear reactor and having that explode over Florida would be quite scary and not something that I would encourage. Oh, this was really neat. This was the model train set inside the Better Living Center. And I had my own 027 set set up in my parents' basement. I think I had one train at this time. I don't think I had added the second one to my thing. So going and seeing this was billed at the time as the world's largest model railroad was just spectacular. I think it was $25 to get inside, and I was very happy to just go and stand there for the longest period of time. Then you could walk over, talk to the guys who were operating it. There were other people that were, building buildings, doing things to add on to it, maintain it. It was just a wonderful operation. They would dim the lights down at night. The buildings would light up, and I didn't have any light up buildings in my train set, so it instantly gave me the idea to go do that. And I put lights inside my train station. My engine already had a light on it when it went around. So my mother would come down to the basement. I'd be sitting there in the dark with my train running around, my train station lit up, feeling quite grown up. Sikorsky helicopter. This was not flown at the fair. It was brought here just as a demo, and they later put out one of the other ones, their prototype ship, the one that was used for the sightseeing tours. So this was not here for a long period of time. And a helicopter view. If you've ever wondered where the Timber Carnival was, this is where we saw the guys throwing the axes and everything before. Here's the hospital, the Atomic Hospital that we saw before, the post office building in the background, and these were World's Fair maintenance shops and other operations that were part of the fairgrounds, but generally not visited by the public. Train yard over here, a whole bunch of the Bluebird train cars lined up. Bridge here is a survivor from the '39 World's Fair. So you have all sorts of different things that you can encapsulate in one quick shot here. And again, what a gorgeous summer day, huh? Just to be out there would be just in heaven. When I have a box of slides, I tend to go through and say which ones would be fun to restore. The aerial ones I get a real kick out of again because I was not able to do that myself. So sometimes in a box I'll do all the aerial ones and I'll get back to the other ones later. Here's where the walkway is. It's just submerging into the water out to the firework launchers. People have seen some of these pictures and they said apartment buildings being built. And, oh my God, I lived in that building years later. So kind of fun how people can recognize things. Sky Screek going up there. You almost expect to see Marshall McLeod up here getting ready to rappel down, right? Kodak, we've seen a lot of pictures of these figures, and this was a really neat one because it's a diorama, and they had a special lens here with a little table, and the idea was you would put your 35mm camera on the little table. This lens was pre-focused, and you would get a nice close-up shot of the Disney figures, or of a squirrel, or of a robin, that sort of thing. But for some reason, some photographer decided to show us how this worked. So it was kind of neat to get a behind-the-scenes shot of the Kodak display. And we're hopping around some more. We'll end in a moment or two. The Hall of Science is now starting to show its way, and it's surfacing and going up. And here's another one. This again shows better. Here's the little bird, the little table, the lens, and a whole little set of instructions telling you exactly what to do to get your camera so you can go back home and all these people with your close-up picture of a bird from an inch or two away. We're over at Hong Kong, free admission. Come on in. Mastro Pizza, I got a kick out of this one. Businessmen are all here having a discussion. They've got their briefcase and they're having their pictures taken. The school kids are over here. They're all very well dressed, must be in a school tour. And just in the background, all sorts of crap and trash, including a little bulldozer or tractor here, because this was taken in the first week of the fair, and there were all sorts of things that frankly just weren't done yet. So it was definitely a work in progress, and this was all cleaned up later on. But for your first week there, you had to look around various odds and ends. And over here, you can see Paul Bunyan standing here, inviting you to come and see the Timber Carnival. On the side of the Theaterama Pavilion, I think this guy's name is Chamberlain. Is that the artist? And I believe this piece has been lost. How you lose something so massive, I don't know. But again, it was made out of all sorts of metal and stuff. Hate to think of somebody recycling it. A touch of old Europe. I'm sure they enjoy this kid coming in, picking up their cart. But nothing says Belgium like 1/2 barbecue chicken, right? Here's the entrance to the model railroad. Oh, I guess it was 50 cents. I thought it was a quarter. Well, I still coughed up my 50 cents. It was great fun to go in and see it. It was a spectacular railroad display. World's largest model railroad. I think the largest one now is in Germany, and it would make this one look like a piker. I think the one in Germany is probably a good 10 or more times size of the World's Fair exhibit. It's absolutely spectacular. And the sky streak in operation. This was one of the shots I would get on the way home, because a lot of times if I couldn't get my parents to take me, they would let me take the Long Island Railroad. So we had to make sure we didn't get the New York Express train, because that would put me in Manhattan. We had to make sure we got the train that would get us over to Jamaica to change for the Babylon line to get out to Baldwin. And we were very, very tired by the time we walked back from the train station to our house, about 1.5 miles. But it was great that we had such convenient service to be able to get out there. Bro, I got a kick out of this one. Of all the things to get a picture of at the fair, you got a Kodak in the back, but let's get a picture of the random vending machines and the ladies' room. And with entrance over the transportation area. And New York State had a constant never-ending thing of people performing. This one, I don't know if I made out the name of the band on it or not. Oh, this is a good one to show. End on a moment or two. Time capsule, the 1939 time capsule is underneath the big granite block in the center. And here is where the 64 capsule is going to be lowered down. On the top here, there's a plaque that says something about this is where the 64 time capsule is going to go. Well, this plaque has shown up on eBay over the last 2 years, and the guy keeps trying to get, I think, $3,000 or something for it. And again, how it survived, they took off the cap, they lowered the time capsule down. I've got plenty of pictures of that, the ceremony of the last day. They blow-torched it off. They filled it with tar. They covered it over, and somehow this guy got the plaque. He doesn't have the whole cylinder, but he's got the plaque. But again, if you're out at the fair site and you want to try to figure out where the time capsule is, and this is a hint, Joey, it might be too much trouble. And I've seen the pictures you guys have of where you're pretending to move the big stone block to get to the time capsule. But hint, hint, nudge, nudge. You don't need to move it. You just need to come over here. Here's where it is, Joey.
Bill, I every time we do that, somebody actually tries to put their weight onto it. And I joke that we're all going to end up in the same ward at the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah. The, what you call it? The hernia ward, huh?
Yeah.
But see, you don't have to do that, Joey. Dig here, right here.
Okay, I next time I'm still trying to negotiate a way to get that plaque. If anyone wants to chip in with me, or I even offered to make the guy dinner for a year.
Isn't it amazing that he sat on it for 60 years? You think by now he just wouldn't take anything he could get for it.
Really? Yeah.
Crazy. And some of the ever-present nuns going past New Mexico. Again, they didn't use their big giant mountain concept, so a number of the states went with other pavilions, other exhibits. Coming in from the train station, walking down to the Sawtooth buildings over the entrance there. How about that for all the train fans, huh? All brand new trains sitting out there. And now most of these are artificial reefs off the coast of the United States. I posted this picture online, and it was really interesting. The train nuts were just going crazy about this, but then down below the car nuts are just, oh no, this is it. Car after car, and I think down by here they petered out trying to figure out what they were. But people are like, oh my goodness, that's the so and such. Oh no, the boat, I can't look at this. It was really, it's always funny what floats our own boats, right? 65 view of the International Village that they put in. Kids could get in for free because they could fit through a hole in the fence of a certain size. Adults had to pay. Just some of the pretty flowers and things around the fairgrounds.
No.
And I think we'll end with this one. A rainy day in New York, but boy, look at it. Just look how pristine it is at this particular shop. What I wouldn't give to go and be able to spend $20 at that souvenir stand in the background, I mean, if only the map looked this good again, huh? So let me just stop sharing here. And I'll let you guys chat just for 1 second. I've got to go and grab something else to drink. I'll be right back. So chatter away. I'll be right with you. Hey, no mail lady today.
Interesting fact, those trains are still on the reef. The state dropped some newer trains and they just rusted away within 4 years. They were totally gone. Those trains are still at the reef. And the dredge fishermen who drop lines hate them because they always get snared on them. But the divers love them.
I'll point out while we're waiting for Bill, I changed my background picture here. If you were looking when Bill showed the space park, on the right side of his image of the rockets, there was this Thor Delta rocket, which is now in my backyard at the Goddard Space Flight Center, which Bill got a chance to see when he was out there, and has been requested several times to provide information on it, when it turns out he provided the original information to the visitor center, but they forgot. But it's kind of cool to have a actual piece of the fair sitting right there. And I didn't know that, I believe, until Bill came out to visit. He said, "Oh yeah, that's from the fair." It's like, oh, gee,
Well,
I feel rather embarrassed.
It was really funny, Kenneth, because I think yesterday was something like the, I forget what anniversary it was of the talk. It popped up as a Facebook memory. And I think it was yesterday that I gave the talk. And I was really flattered. You know, I mentioned earlier, I had worked on designing rockets and that. And, you know, I really admire the people that do this stuff. So it was, Kenneth invited me to come back and give a talk about NASA's exhibits at all the world's fairs. And I was in the theater and I mentioned that, you know, oh, and you guys have the rocket. It's actually outside the building. About a quarter of the audience also wanted to stand up and run out the door to go see it. I said, trust me, we'll be there after the talk, you know, sort of thing. But there, all of a sudden there was this buzz. I didn't know that. Oh, wow, wow. But that was kind of funny to see everybody's reaction when I mentioned that. So yeah, but that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And Kenneth, they were still building the new James. What's the west of the thing called?
The James Webb Space Telescope. Yeah,
Well,
they were
James
still
Webb.
building it then.
Yeah. So we've got pictures. They have a big visitors gallery that you can see the guys in the moon suits in the clean room putting it together. And Kenneth gave us the tour, and we got the picture of us, Carol and me, standing there with it behind us. He took us to show us the centrifuge room and just all sorts of neat stuff. And then we had a really great time that day. But again, it was so funny when I mentioned that rocket. Whoa!
Thanks, Bill. Good talk. We'll see you later.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I felt good at the end of it. Somebody came up and said that everybody stayed to the end, and they said the only guy that had a bigger draw that kept people to the end before you was Jimmy Doohan, you know, from Star Trek. So that. I said, you know, if he can beat me, I'm fine with that. I was happy. But that talk is online. If you go to my website, there's a link out to it that NASA has it up on their website. So what are you guys?
If you go there and it doesn't work, let me know. Sometimes it disappears.
Yeah. What are you guys working on now that the web's up there? You guys just coasting?
Now we're working on the Roman Space Telescope, which is going to be same wavelengths, infrared light that Webb does, but very, very wide field of view, something like 100 times the field of view of Hubble or Webb for that matter. So the idea will be able to do surveys over most of the sky, you know, and it'll get pictures of clusters or of entire galaxies in 1 or 2 shots instead of Hubble requiring 400 images to be mosaic together to get the whole view. So it's going to have a much faster time of trying to do broad area surveys.
Speaking of Hubble, why don't you fill everybody in that doesn't know about your TV appearance this week?
Oh, hey. Well, on was it Wednesday and Thursday? Wednesday, there was a press release with a latest Hubble result, which was the detection of the furthest individual star ever observed. So this means not a cluster of stars or a huge galaxy, but a single star, almost 13 billion light years back in light travel time. And we only were able to see that far back because of something called a gravitational lens. It's a natural occurrence between us in the distant star that acts as a magnifying glass, makes the source brighter and larger, so we can see things that ordinarily would be too faint or too small to see with Hubble. So we did that, and as among the various festivities we did for that were a series of television live shots where a bunch of us get 5 to 10 minute windows with local TV anchors all across the country, and they do we just do a quick summary of what's going on. And I did about, I don't know, 8 of them or something, but the one that was the most fun, the one that Bill's talking about that I put a link out on, is with a station in Los Angeles, KTTV, I think, Fox 11, I think it was. And I got this anchor who was just over the moon excited. I mean, we ended up just building on each other and having this, huge love fest of it. And it was great because when you get somebody that enthused, it just pulls it out of you too. So that's going to be, I've done a number of these over the years. That's got to be up in the top of being the most fun, and probably better for the audience too, when they see 2 people getting excited like that. So it was a blast.
If you have the link, Hennis, send it to me and I'll post it for everybody in the chat.
Okay, stand by.
Okay, I just posted, Scott had sent the link to the Guinness World Record for the world's largest train set. 8 countries could take you, go there and you'll see it. Wayne, you had your hand up?
Yeah, the picture of the flip down seat in the monorail, that actually has a long pedigree. That's a streetcar motorman's seat.
Oh,
And I remember seeing those when I took the Lake Street streetcar to the YMCA in Chicago when I was 9 or 10.
I remember seats like that, as I mentioned, in checker cabs. They also had them in the big cabs in Germany. England. I'm just doing Kenneth's post here 1 second. Where you get in the black cabs and they had the seat in the back, and every time I was with my boss and everything, they would always get the good seat and I'd have to sit on the little flop down seat, which was great fun as you're going around because there's nothing to hold on to. So if the cab driver is in a hurry to get from Heathrow at 80 miles an hour, it was fun to sit in those. But that's motorman cab seat. I did not know that. Yeah, I just posted Kenneth's appearance out there on Fox LA, and you can see him. And as he mentioned, the news anchor, she was real excited. I think she was as thrilled to be talking to you as you might have been talking to her. Sorry, Scott, you had your hand up. You're muted, sir.
No, sir. No,
Oh, okay. I thought you were waiting. Yeah.
Nope, sorry.
Oh, no problem. So
Unless you need light bulbs.
well, if you can find a light bulb to fit whatever those fixtures were that were sitting outside the GE pavilion, we'll find some light bulbs for that. Joey in the chat said that he's going to turn down the rocket engine because he's in enough trouble with his neighbors already.
Yeah, that wouldn't be very good.
I
to come
think as
out in the
long as you
morning
don't
and
turn
see
it
that.
on, Joey, you'd be okay.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, when they were dismantling them, I was there with my 2 dogs, and I think we posted a picture of that. And they put them on the Ford site. They had them.
Yeah, I remember they
had
were
a
stacked
crane,
up
and
there for a while.
they took them all there, and they just collected them at the Ford site. Yeah, and they were there for a long, long time. Yeah. So, but it was every time I would pass by, because they were behind a chain link fence, I gave up all hope of ever trying to get this thing out of the park.
Hey, middle of the night. One of the things we drive around on patrol is you spend a lot of time just sitting in the car looking at neighborhoods, and it's amazing the things you see in people's yards. And this one house we went down it's about 6 months ago. He's got this gigantic Statue of Liberty in his front yard. Must stand 20 feet out there. And that's just one of the things he has. And it's the sort of thing you pull up and you look at it, And it's like, where does somebody go and get, where, first of all, where do you go to get a 20-foot Statue of Liberty? I mean, you know, it's a catalog or something. But then he's got, you know, circus clowns, and just, the neighbors must love it, because, you know, everybody does what we do. You drive down the street, whoa, wait a second, what is that? And it's just, it's bizarre. I mean, we see some houses that are just gorgeous, and then all of a sudden somebody's just got weird stuff, you know, stacked out in front of the house. So it, yeah, I'm sure your neighbors would love a rocket engine out there.
And what's interesting though is if you were going to the park in the 70s and you went into Space Park because it was abandoned and you could just walk right in. A lot of the stuff from the boosters, a lot of the stuff from the other rockets were all over the ground. So you could take anything. Hoses, there were hoses on the ground. There were light bulbs on the ground.
Yeah, Philip Bueller has his amazing pictures on his website of Space Park in that period of time, with the display boards are still there, and some of the wording is there. Some of this part has been graffitied over and that sort of stuff. So again, if you go to look up his name, Philip Bueller, Buehler, he's got a fantastic website, because he does basically not just the 64 fair, but he's gone on board the SS United States. He's gone to the abandoned launch pads at Cape Kennedy, all sorts of urban exploration stuff that he does. And again, just mind-boggling pictures that he and his brother went to the space park, and he had the foresight, as he said, to take the pictures. And as you said, everything just lying there in the ground, light fixtures and signage and benches, and, you know, just there for the taking.
Yeah.
So, well, I hope everybody enjoyed the flashback. Oh, Richard, yeah, how you doing there?
All right, how are you?
That's fine.
I'm good. I was at the space park about 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm pretty sure I stood underneath an STS-5 engine that was still there. Because they put a lot of money in the Hall of Science over the last dozen years or so, and I think the array on what the Apollo sent up, Ken would know, had 5 of them in, 5 STS-5 engines,
Right.
and they had a devil of a time getting the vibrations quelled that got set up when those things were going off. But I got a chance to stand underneath it, and I think probably if you walked in there today, you still could.
Yeah, I think they kept one and they surplused 4 of them. You know, I had the pleasure of working at Cape Kennedy when we did the Apollo Soyuz launch. And to me, that was amazing, you know, and you know, the whole ground shook, and I can still remember every rattlesnake in the area, and armadillo, everything was running for its life. And I was just really impressed. And one of the old timers said, "Ah, it was nothing. You should have seen it when we sent the whole stack up." But, you know, the power of that thing must have been just astonishing. Was anybody here ever down there when they launched the whole Saturn V? Because for the Apollo Soyuz, they didn't use the whole thing. They used an abbreviated thing, and they had to build a big metal tower to build the rocket on, to get it so the top part was up where the top part would be, but the bottom part, you know, they didn't have. It was just the tower, because they weren't using that stage. Just astonishing to see that, you know, the Apollo Soyuz go up. I cannot imagine having been there when they launched one of the Apollo mission, you know, moon missions. That must have just been mind-numbing. Now, Carol,
Yeah.
you lived out here when they were testing the rockets, but you weren't here in the valley. Did you ever read any of the descriptions of what they were doing with that?
You know, with my usual good memory, I don't remember anything about it.
Because we took Kenneth up there. The Santa Susana Pass has the testing range, and they would basically build these rockets here in Canoga Park. I mentioned that there was one that was a flight-ready one that after the last mission was canceled, they just kept it as a memorial. They would build them up here in Canoga Park, take them up into the Santa Susana mountains, and they had big test stands up there. And they would, you know, set them off, and like, you know, Richard's mentioned the vibration and all the rest of it. But they managed to contaminate the crap out of the hills with all the rocket fuel, and they also had a nuclear reactor meltdown. It's a lovely area. But, you know, if you fly over, you can still see the old Apollo test stand areas that are scattered around out there. So we were thinking when Kenneth was out here trying to flash his NASA ID and tell him we needed to go and check it out. But I was all set for it. He chickened out, something about needing to keep his job and had a mortgage and stuff like that.
I don't know, Bill. I don't remember you mentioning that part about you know, the meltdown in that area. I'm not sure it would have gone that close.
It's actually a really scary situation. They had the concept that they were going to make small nuclear reactors. I think they were some was sodium fueled reactors, and the idea was they built this one up there in the hills, and it was able to generate enough energy for I forget 25,000 houses, something like that. It's a fairly small building, about the size of my house, and they had a meltdown on it, and it got away from them, and it became a huge issue. And the building's still out there, and they give a tour like one day a year or something. You can go out, but it ended up doing massive contamination of the groundwater down below it. So if you go out there, and what's really scary about the way the government thinks or does things, you know, like there's a big picture of water behind Wayne. Well, Chatsworth had this giant reservoir at that point in time. So you've got the reservoir, and in the hills above it, you've got a nuclear reactor and rocket fuel leaching into the ground, right? So what does stuff do? It goes down. Well, the 1972 earthquake damaged the dam at the Chatsworth Reservoir, and they decided between the ground pollution and the damaged dam, they would never refill the reservoir. So now it's just used as a nature preserve. But all the houses around there now, people have come to realize that they've had huge spikes in cancer deaths and illnesses and all sorts of stuff. So it's a designated EPA Superfund, but the property has been sold about 9 times over the years. As you know, Boeing got out of this, and this guy did that, and everybody says, "Oh no, it's their fault." So you drive up there, and it's a beautiful area. I was up there just last week. Well, that was just last Saturday, I guess it was. A boulder fell down off a cliff and came down on the road, and I had to go do traffic control around it. And I was joking to my partner at the time. I said, "Hey, you know why these hills are so empty and nobody lives up here?" No, it's a pretty area. Why? He said, "Let me tell you while we're standing here in the middle of the road." So it's really sad, but go look for a Santa Susana nuclear reactor. And they've, again, tremendous problem. And that put the idea of having small reactors every couple of miles down the road to rest. They decided that having hundreds or thousands of these things around the country would not be a good idea. But I believe before 3 Mile Island and stuff, this was the biggest nuclear thing in the U.S. It's not quite Chernobyl, but it's our version of it. Well, next week, any other thoughts, memories, observations? Next week, I will not be here. I have to play crowd control for a bunch of drunks that are having a giant street fair that they want us to go on. You know, I don't know who's going to give them the field sobriety test on their way in, but my job is to make sure people don't drive their cars into the street fair. So when they drive out, it's somebody else's problem. So 2 weeks from now, I intend to come up with a more scripted show. Appreciate people just coming for the randomness, but it has been incredibly busy late trying to put things together. Before we go, though, I need everybody, let's see, Wayne's still on mute. You need to take yourself off mute 1 second. And Beth, you need to take yourself off mute because Carol knows what's coming. We're all going to sing happy birthday because Carol's birthday is tomorrow. So, or we can sing Small World, one of the two. But 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday
to you. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday,
dear Carol.
Happy birthday to you. With the
Thank
time lag, that's
you.
an amazing recording.
By the time we get to the end of the song, we can get in sync.
Okay, now,
That never works with all the different delays that we all have.
yeah,
Many more healthy ones, Carol.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I hope so.
Happy birthday, Carol.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So we'll
I'm
see-
getting too old to count anymore.
Bill, get her a Disney cake.
No, it's really funny. We're both trying to decide what to do cake wise, because we're both still trying to be good eating wise. So, but I think tomorrow we're gonna go and splurge. We
Yeah,
might as
it's
well.
a special occasion. Happy birthday, Carol.
Thank
We
you,
love you.
Joey.
Great. Well, we'll see you all in 2 weeks then. Have a great time and hope the weather treats you all nice. Take care.
Well, be
Thanks,
safe.
Bill.
Bye-bye.
Bye.